It's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Regular listeners will know that a few weeks ago we heard from Matt Fry, presenter and Europe correspondent of the UK's Channel 4 News. He was reporting from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv on the mood there as Russian forces began massing on the border. You will not be surprised to learn that he is back in Kyiv, waiting and watching for what could be the inevitable arrival of those forces if Vladimir Putin pushes ahead and seeks to topple the Ukrainian government.
What will happen to the people who are living here? Many of them have tried to leave. There was a massive traffic jam this morning of people getting into their cars and just heading west towards the Polish border, which is about a 7-hour drive. It's not a quick drive, and given the level of traffic, it'll probably take a lot longer. But I'm looking at the foreign ministry, for instance, through my window in the hotel where I'm staying, and that could be a target. So far, it's still standing. I'm hoping it carries on that way. I'm looking at the wonderful gold leaf-tipped domes of the gorgeous churches of Kyiv, and there's a kind of strange suspension of disbelief about what on earth is going on here right now.
Disbelief in Western capitals as well, where even many seasoned analysts of the Russian president never quite imagined that he would really go ahead with it. But he has, opening the door to a very uncertain future in East-West relations. The main news again, the European Union is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov and freezing their assets. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound in Kyiv to discount Russian propaganda reports that he had fled. And President Biden has picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed, she'll become the first black woman justice. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
The American robin heralds the beginning of spring in temperate climates across North America. Its red breast makes it easily identifiable as the most disturbingly efficient murderer in the animal kingdom. Robins inculcate their young with these twisted maws. We see an adult robin feeding its young with the ripped-apart viscerae of an innocent worm. Like the Greek hero Atreus eating the flesh of his children at his own table, this black deed must surely curse the entire species. Even the most depraved acts of humanity pale in comparison to the robin's wickedness. Like idiot rapists, they commit their foul deeds with neither foresight nor hindsight. They live entirely in the present. Living beyond space and time, their god is the awful seething maelstrom of chaos at the center of the unfeeling universe.
This is the Onion News Network. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Welcome to the program. Here you can bring up whatever's on your mind. All you have to do is dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. To start things out, we're going to focus again on what's happening in Ukraine, or what is alleged to be happening in Ukraine, because as I pointed out, and I think we should continue to point out, you cannot trust the Western media because they're basically mouthpieces of the United States government, and you cannot trust the Russian government either.
Nope.
So where is the truth? Well, it's hard to know, but at least we have the ability, finally, now that we have the internet age, to actually get both sides and whatever other sides there might be out there.
Well, did you hear that they're actually censoring people for expressing at least some views?
Who's they?
I don't know. I think it's was it the UK that was going? I forget who it was, but somebody's going after YouTube. And
the allegation here is that YouTube is censoring certain accounts.
Yep.
So this was posted by Odyssey, which is where we do our live streaming.
Yeah, it's not just YouTube though. There's others that I think Twitter was doing it too. There's a few. There's a few other social media. At least a few.
They're all run by the same deep state.
Yeah, yeah, that might be a fair argument.
So according to the Odyssey team post that they made earlier today, Odyssey again is the freedom-friendly streaming platform. It's also a video storage platform that is ultimately based on a protocol called Library, which is a decentralized, blockchain-based, what's the right word here? Social, or not social, well, I guess it does have a social aspect to it, but it's a media storage protocol. It's an uncensorable, Library is an uncensorable media storage protocol. So that's what backs up the Odyssey system. And Odyssey, of course, is trying to compete with YouTube. They've created a pretty nice-looking platform that has existed now for a couple of years. And, of course, whenever YouTube does something naughty, they usually comment on it over at the Odyssey social media. So they say here that apparently YouTube is now banning Ukraine war coverage, or at least some Ukraine war coverage. Somebody comments here.
Anything that doesn't slant it in the right direction if they're true to form.
As I understand it, it's pro-Russian. So if you're pro-Russian, whatever that means, they're going to ban you.
Yeah, well, actually, the reverse is what's being said here. So somebody claims their account was banned because YouTube is being flooded by Russian bots who are reporting anyone who speaks out against what they describe as war criminal dictator Putin. YouTube, you're being attacked, and your human account holders are being kicked off your platform by a flood of Russian bots. Do something and stop sitting on your hands over Russia. Their money will not make up for the crimes they are currently committing, and it makes no financial sense to allow your audience to be evicted and replaced with bots.
The thing is,
how does that work?
There's nobody but criminals involved. The people running the Ukraine are criminals. The people running Russia are criminals. And the people running the United States are criminals.
This person has obviously bought into the Western propaganda that Russia is bad and that Putin is Hitler. As we pointed out last night, actually both sides are calling each other Nazis.
Yeah.
So on one side, you've got Putin, who's saying he's there in Ukraine to, quote, de-Nazify the country, and there's actually a story from the Russian propaganda about what that means that we can share coming up here. But then on the other hand, if you look at the front of Drudge Report right now, they literally have a photograph of Putin dressed up as Hitler with like the little Hitler mustache. And
I wanted to do one like that for Trudeau.
I think that's been done. Actually,
I couldn't find one on the net.
You might not have looked hard enough. I'm certain I've seen that one with Trudeau.
Yeah.
So both sides are saying that the other side is the Nazis, and the propaganda is hitting hard and heavy.
Well, neither side is lying, from what I can tell. Both sides are Nazis.
Indeed.
Yeah.
DailyMail.co.uk says that Anonymous has now declared quote-unquote cyber war against Vladimir Putin's government before announcing they have taken down the Kremlin-backed TV channel RT, which is interesting because last night I was saying on the air that I was having trouble accessing RT from a couple of my devices on this local fiber internet connection that we have here. I was able to pull it up on my cell phone's internet connection.
What's interesting is I think it's still on YouTube, actually, RT. So
wouldn't surprise me, and it's back, by the way. I'm able to once again access the site from the same device that wasn't working on it last night. I was getting like connection reset errors last night.
The thing that's
It'd
weird,
be pretty hard for a hacker to take RT off YouTube without taking YouTube down,
right?
Which sounds probably more than they want to do.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird though because RT is like the first thing I would think that they would go after as far as the government and trying to take down pro-Russian content. But what's interesting though is that RT doesn't actually have that many viewers for their videos. I'm not sure what their subscriber numbers are, but like a couple 100,000 maybe for a video. Their numbers aren't like they're not like
that's pretty sweet. I would be happy with that.
I know.
That was what I was getting.
Okay, but we're like little people,
Yeah.
I expect when you get to millions of views for at least some of your videos, then you're kind of in the big leagues on YouTube as opposed to
I bet you if you went to CNN's site, they probably have some weak videos too.
They probably do, but I didn't see
Joe Rogan gets much better numbers than CNN.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't think I didn't see a single video on like RT that was like 1 million views. So whereas if you look at ABC or CNN or any of these other channels,
well, YouTube pushes those other channels, by the way.
I'm sure they do.
If you search for some sort of news,
yeah,
or whatever, like for instance, a good example of this would have been the Ottawa trucker convoy thing that I went to YouTube because I wanted to find live streams from Ottawa, and so I typed in Ottawa, and then of course it's like CBC, which is the government's official propaganda in Canada, and then the Toronto News, and then all the official government-approved, government-sponsored news sources were first on the list, and you had to scroll quite a ways before you could get to the actual independent journalists.
CIA tube.
Yeah. So let's get into this story about Anonymous here, because there's not much else to say about YouTube. I mean, it's no surprise that they're doing the bidding of whoever it is they're doing the bidding of. But Anonymous has now declared cyber war against Vladimir Putin's government. So this is after the invasion of Ukraine. The elusive computer experts issued a stark announcement on their Twitter account. And I think you guys pointed this out off the air, like, Anonymous is supposed to be decentralized. It's supposed, like, how do they have an official Twitter account?
They don't. They can't. It doesn't work that way.
So who controls?
If they're a bunch of
kind of
criminals,
the joke.
then how can they stay on Twitter when I can't?
Okay, so this is the funny thing, right? Like, Anonymous is both pro the Kremlin, pro Ukraine, and pro the United States, and anti the U.S., anti Ukraine, and anti Putin, like all simultaneously.
They said shortly before 10 p.m., quote, "The Anonymous Collective is officially in cyber war against the Russian government." 30 minutes later, they announced they had taken down the website of RT, which broadcasts in Britain and around the world, for that matter. When the Daily Mail attempted to access the site, it was inaccessible and only displayed an error message that said this site can't be reached. The cyber war declaration raises the prospect that Russia could be subjected to systematic hacking attempts in the coming days. And prior to the invasion on Thursday, the country's government and banks were targeted by a massive cyber attack that was believed to have been carried out by Russia. People on social media responded positively to Anonymous's cyber war declaration against Putin. And then it just goes on to talk about what people had to say about this. But of course, what does the Russian government have to say? And that is the one thing you are not going to be given in the mainstream Western media coverage of this, is a fair assessment of what their position is.
Is it a fair assessment that you have something from the Russian perspective? Or at least Putin's perspective?
Oh, yes, because RT's website is accessible at the moment, as is their other alternative, which I'm sure the hackers probably don't know that much about, Sputnik International, which is their alternative to RT. It's another Russian-controlled, Russian government-funded media. And so there's an article here about what is meant when Putin says denazification, because that's one of his goals, supposedly, in invading Ukraine, is to denazify it.
The Ukraine was well known for collaborating during World War II.
So we're going to talk about that coming up here in moments. Your calls and thoughts are welcome. You can join us at 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Hi, I'm Montel Williams. Most of you know me as a talk show host, but I'm also an author, actor, single father of 4, a fitness writer, avid snowboarder, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. Like many of the million people who are living with multiple sclerosis, I'm in pain every single day. And sometimes my nerves are so raw that if you brushed up against me in an elevator, I'd scream. I can't sleep at night from the pain, and sometimes the spasms in my legs are so intense they will wake me up throughout the night. I've tried the strongest prescription medications available, and I'm going to tell you, they do not work. In fact, they leave me in a stupor, and most of the time, it's impossible to even live your life. Now, I've tried medical marijuana, and I'm going to tell you something, it works. If you'd like more information about medical marijuana, you can contact the Marijuana Policy Project at mpp.org or call 1-877-JOIN-MPP.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join us talking about Ukraine. Coming up, we'll get into an interesting turnaround from a pretty big-name computer programmer on his opinions regarding Bitcoin, because he was completely against it. And the situation in Canada apparently has changed his mind. We'll get into that on the way here tonight. With you, by the way, you've got Ian.
Nobody. And Chris.
And don't forget, speaking of Bitcoin, you can head over to bitcoin.com, and that is where you can learn things about Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash and cryptocurrency in general. There is a little learning curve involved in learning the basics, but they'll help you out. And it's free. So you can go over to bitcoin.com, click Get Started at the top of the page to do that. Once again, that's bitcoin.com. There's no better time than now. If you've waited, you should go and get started learning about Bitcoin, because as these government monies become worth less and less through the process of inflation, it is all the more important for you to understand what the alternatives are. And Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, Bitcoin Cash, etc., these are alternatives for you to the government systems. And I've heard, by the way, that whatever the hell the Ukrainian money is called is starting to take a dive. So Ukrainians all of a sudden really interested in cryptocurrency more so than ever before. Exchange numbers are something like quadrupling out there.
I'm actually surprised that the numbers aren't going up for crypto. And I guess they did. They went from like 36 to 39.
They took a dive down to about 34. We're just talking about the Bitcoin price here. The Bitcoin price took a dive down to about 34,000 the night of the invasion.
Okay.
And then ever since then, it's been coming up. So it's up to around 39,000.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it does what it wants.
It does. It really does. It's so unpredictable. Like like with Greece, I remember things went up as a result of Greece
when they were having like those banking
they were banking runs because they basically restricted the amount of money I think people could withdraw from ATMs and things like that, and they just basically stole their citizens or their people's money, I guess that were in Greece banks.
Wow. Yeah, there's supposed to be a bank run going on in Canada also.
I've heard about that too.
Yeah.
Which is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of people closing down TD accounts from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I saw a photograph of a guy holding a stack of the Canadian money, and he talks about how he was with TD Bank for 33 years, and he went in and closed out his account. And he's going to take all of his car loans away from TD Bank as well. So step by step, he's cutting them out.
It's not just Canadians. I know people in the United States are closing that account. I know one person personally who closed his account. I think already closed it, or he's going to close it on Monday.
Is he going to tell him why?
For sure. Okay, I'm sure.
Good.
Yeah.
By the way, TD stands for Toronto Dominion. That's what the TD stands for. Yeah, it's actually I learned a little bit more about it. It's a combination of two other banks. So one was called Dominion Bank, the other one was like Toronto something or other. So that's where that came from.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The number here is 603-283-6160. So we're talking about the Ukraine situation. What is it that was meant when Putin said he intended to, quote, de-Nazify the Ukraine government? That was one of his two goals in this invasion, which some people would call it an invasion. Other people would call it a freedom-fighting excursion.
Yeah, Putin doesn't care about freedom.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But that his original reason, ostensibly for going in, was to back up the independence movements in the Donbass region of Ukraine, which is two states of Ukraine that had declared independence.
That's what he says.
That's what he says.
The reason I think that he's going in is because NATO has refused to close the door on Ukraine joining them, and Putin does not want NATO at his back door.
And he's saying that now.
He's been saying that for years.
Yeah.
And he said that in Crimea before he went in there.
Right.
We bear some fault.
You mean the U.S. government?
The U.S. government bears some fault.
Yeah, the strategic. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious the strategic, reasons that Putin doesn't want a hostile neighbor, right? Effectively, because that's kind of what Ukraine has become. But at the same time, it's not the first country he's invaded in recent years. He's also invaded Georgia, I believe, and I think there was another one.
Both of which were being were in talks with NATO.
So it's not it's one of these things where it's like, he probably would and will invade other countries and continue to do so is my gut feeling.
Well, I'll tell you this, if they took over Canada, we wouldn't want them there.
You mean if the Russians took over Canada?
If the Russians took over Canada, we wouldn't want them there. I mean, Trudeau's bad enough.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. They've got, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, they could invade Canada, I suppose, if that's something they wanted to do.
Yeah, they're not going to take over Canada.
They'd have to go through Alaska first.
My point is, nobody wants him at their back door.
Yeah.
He doesn't want us or NATO at his back door.
Yes, exactly. And supposedly, at least according to Putin, in some of the statements that he's been making, that they were promised that NATO would not continue to expand after the fall of the Soviet Union, and
which they were.
It has.
Yeah, that's true. There was a non-binding promise, effectively, which is meaningless.
Sure.
That they
you
would
mean a
expand.
lie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't that what a non-binding promise is?
Absolutely. Spot on. You hit the mark. Nobody.
Oh, and by the way, there was a image that came out today that was apparently, I think, the border of Poland to Ukraine. So Poland is one of the countries that borders Ukraine on the northwest side there. And the claim was that NATO is sending in truckloads full of quote-unquote supplies, which, it's weapons, into Ukraine. So, I mean, NATO is apparently moving into
NATO,
Ukraine.
that's interesting. I
as
heard,
we speak.
I heard the United
Isn't that
States, I
special?
believe, had supplied them with, but I think the United States was more blatant as to what they were sending in terms of arms. So I think they I don't know if it was rocket launcher. It was something very obviously to fight Russia, right? Like they weren't playing games. They were using the words. They weren't shy about the words they were using.
I guess when you buy Joe Biden and his crackhead kid, you get what you paid for.
So, who was behind the coup that happened in Ukraine in 2014? I've heard rumors the CIA might have been involved in that, and Putin references the that coup.
Interesting.
In the Sputnik news story here, in the question of what did Putin...
But they would never rig our elections because they've got morals.
Right. What did he mean by the denazification or denazification? For years, says this is again Russian propaganda. All of it's propaganda. It's either Western propaganda or it's Russian propaganda. So you decide. Russia's been calling on Western nations to investigate cases of human rights abuse, illegal killings, and war crimes committed by the Ukrainian authorities that came to power after the coup in 2014. Moscow pointed out that many of them were committed by neo-Nazis against Russians or Russian-speaking people. When Vladimir Putin was announcing the start of a special operation to protect the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics on the 24th of February, he described the goals as, quote, demilitarizing and denazifying, unquote, Ukraine. His spokesman later elaborated that denazifying means that Russia is planning to free Ukraine from neo-Nazis, their supporters, and their ideology. So again, you've got both sides claiming that the other side is the Nazi.
Neo-Nazis, neo-commies, all the same to me.
Yeah, don't think either of them have the high ground here.
Well, let's talk about it on the way. The number is 603-283-6160. Plus, if you want to weigh in on your thoughts on Ukraine or whatever's on your mind, you can bring up what you want on Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies and organisations that the US has sanctioned this week, some critics had wondered why the United States had not taken the step of sanctioning the Russian leader himself. On Friday, the Biden administration changed that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki making the announcement.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
US President Joe Biden had said for several weeks he was considering sanctions and asset freezes against Putin. But the Western countries have not imposed a travel ban on the Russian leader in order to allow him to travel to any potential talks and keep the door of diplomacy open.
In Kyiv,
Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound tonight, assuring people he is still in the Ukrainian capital after Russia's propaganda organs falsely claimed that he'd fled. We're here. We are defending Ukraine, he said. In Moscow today,
Россия обеспечит демилитаризацию Украины.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov claiming the Kremlin would be open to talks with Ukrainian officials, but later President Putin himself dismissed the idea, urging urging members of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to turn against President Zelensky and his government. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to fortify the alliance's defences along its eastern flank, and he offered this assessment of the military situation in Ukraine.
The Ukrainian forces are fighting bravely, but again, it is a very fluid and an evolving situation.
A statement by NATO heads of state and government called for an immediate halt to Russia's military assault and the withdrawal of Moscow's forces. Ollie Barrett with more from FSN's London bureau.
The characterization from Boris Johnson, he says it's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. The phones are open here. You can join the program. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Here in the studio tonight, we've got Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. And you can join us online anytime you want. Head over to freetalklive.com and you can follow our podcast, which is available via RSS feeds. We've got those over at feeds.freetalklive.com. That'll take you right to a page where you can copy those feed URLs and drop them right into your favorite podcast client, whatever that might happen to be. And then you will be receiving automatically our episodes as they are uploaded. So you don't have to think about it. They're just right there for you whenever you want to go and grab them and listen to them. So check out our feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com as we go to your phone calls and thoughts more about the so-called de-Nazification of Ukraine. That's what Putin has been saying that his goal is in this invasion. What does it mean? We'll talk about that. But first, we've got Sam on the line in Ohio. Sam, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, so I've been trying for a long time to convince some of my relatives that the dollar is eventually going to become worthless. And they always keep telling me, well, it doesn't matter. And so I was almost wondering, like...
It doesn't matter?
Yeah.
Well, are they already really highly invested in gold and silver and cryptocurrency or other investments?
Nothing.
No. Okay.
They only have stocks.
Ooh, that's probably not a good plan. So you tried to tell them what?
Basically, the dollar is a fiction of your imagination, and the only reason why it has any value at all is because you fakely trust it. Because of the decree that it has any value.
Okay.
Explain the term fiat and everything to them.
I mean, they probably value it because other people will accept it. If nobody will accept it, then they're not going to. Well, it's not going to be very useful to them either.
Do they notice the fact that prices are going up? Have they taken? Are they aware of that?
Yeah, but they try to ignore that too. They're like, "Oh, that's happened before. It doesn't matter."
Well, it certainly has happened before. I mean, that's because the dollar's supply is constantly being inflated.
I mean, I guess as long as you're not saving the money, it might not be as big of a deal.
Yeah, are they spenders? Do they spend every single dollar that they receive?
Paycheck to paycheck?
No,
they're saving dollars.
No, they're invested in stocks.
Oh, stocks, right?
Yeah.
Well, stocks do tend to float on top of inflation.
Yeah, that's true.
Because a corporation has a certain level of debt. And if that level of debt stays constant, well, their prices keep rising, then they're actually becoming more profitable against the equipment. The thing that makes corporations go bankrupt in the presence of inflation is they fail to calculate that it's going to cost more to replace their capital equipment. So then when things wear out, they end up getting surprised and, oh no, we're underwater now.
Oh, that thing that cost X 20 years ago now costs 3X.
Exactly.
Like that.
Yeah, or 100X or 1,000X, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Hyperinflation.
Plus, as the prices start to crash, or as not the prices, but as the dollar continues to crash and crash harder, that's probably going to cause some financial difficulties for these companies, and companies that have been doing all right may all of a sudden not be doing so great. But these are things that aren't going to persuade your parents or whoever it is you're talking about. They don't sound like they are particularly open to persuasion on this, so I think you should probably just give up on them, honestly. I mean, if they see prices rising and they don't care about it, then I don't see how you could get them to care.
You know who might
it's almost like they're brainwashed, is what you're saying?
Well, I mean, I wasn't going to use those terms. It's just they're ignorant, and they're blissfully ignorant about it. They don't care. I mean, most people would. Are they rich? Are your parents really wealthy?
No, they're middle class.
Okay, because if you had an S ton of money, then I guess you might not care as much about the prices going up at the grocery store. But when people see prices going up and it matters to them what the bottom line is as far as their household budget and that sort of thing, then they might want to know why that is happening. But if your parents see prices going up and they just shrug it off, like, oh well, that's just the way things are, then it just doesn't seem like they're persuadable. I mean, what do you guys think? Have you ever tried to persuade friends or family member on these issues?
It's a battle not worth having.
Yeah, I don't argue with my family about politics anymore.
Yeah, it's not even just family. It's just in general, that's an argument. I mean, it's a battle just not worth having with most people. People are just stuck in their ways. Either they understand what you're saying or they don't.
I mean, the frustration I think that Sam is bringing up here is that it's different from just your average Joe on the street or a coworker or something. Your family, it's a lot of times you care about them, right? Like you want what's best for them, unless they're like abusive to you or something like that. I see you're rolling your eyes, Chris. So I don't know what
I
your
don't have to be abusive to you, but
I don't know what your relationship is with your family. But a lot of people are real close to their family, and it's frustrating to them when they don't care about the same things that you do. I personally have moved on myself. It doesn't matter to me what they want to do.
I mean, you're just not going to change people's minds.
No.
So it's like, why?
And you're even less likely to change your family's mind.
Right. And why are you going to exert energy for something that you're not going to accomplish anything anyway?
I have a good relationship with my family, and I kind of want to keep it that way. So
all the more reason not to have that conversation.
So tell them that they're wrong.
Arguing politics with them is not the answer. They grew up during the Great Depression under FDR, and
your parents are in their 90s, by the way.
Yeah,
just for
they were indoctrinated by his schools,
and they've never changed, huh?
No.
See, I would have thought that the exact opposite would be true of grandparents, that they would understand, putting money under the bed as opposed to putting it in banks because they lost money.
Well, my grandfather lost money, not my father. My father was a child.
I'm sorry.
For
some reason I thought you said grandparents.
No.
So Sam, any other thoughts you want to share on this? Go ahead.
So it sounds like you're almost saying that it's like they're brainwashed to the point where it's a lost cause.
I mean, that's ultimately a decision that you have to make. I agree with what nobody said here. I also have a good relationship with my parents, but I understand that if I tell them the things that I'm interested in and do, that usually leads to arguments, at least on the case of my mom, and my dad just kind of keeps quiet.
He knows better.
He's the one that has to live with her. But I leave it alone because it doesn't benefit me, and it doesn't matter if I persuade them on these issues. They've made up their mind, and to me, my time is valuable, and it's only worth spending on people that are good prospects. And I don't consider them to be good prospects. I consider younger people generally to be better prospects. They're less set in their ways than people who are in their retirement age.
I usually look for people who are at a teachable point, because it changes depending on where you are in your life. It's when you start, when I hear people expressing surprise or observing things that, that we can explain.
Like, my God, these prices.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Or what are they do? Why are they pushing these masks? They don't work.
Mm-hmm.
That's. I look for somebody who's at least considering taking the red pill. The CDC, by the way, has offered guidance. They're strongly recommending that nobody that we take the blue pill, not the red pill.
Yeah, Sam, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
22.
22. And so you're at a young, point in your life at which you got to get over the idea that the odds are you're probably never going to change your family's mind about things, and focus your time and your effort on more productive things for you. Maybe, planning whatever's coming next for you, whether that be getting out of your family's house and migrating to where people actually understand what these things mean. Because as we've talked about, the Free State Project and the idea of getting liberty lovers together in one place, there's just no better plan. And a lot of families aren't going to understand that. They're going to call, they're going to say, oh my God, my son's joining a cult or whatever. And the reality is, it makes sense to be with like-minded people. And it's sad when your family isn't like-minded. It's frustrating.
Tell them you're not joining a cult, you're leaving one.
Thanks, good. Sam. You like that one.
Yeah, that's good.
All right, thanks, Sam, for the call. There's more coming up here. If you've got advice for Sam, feel free to weigh in here. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing. To be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Never, ever send a follow-up email asking, "Did you get my email?" Email 101, if it didn't bounce back undeliverable, it got where you sent it. And avoid transmedia pestering, like calling to ask, "Did you get my email?" or emailing to say, "I left you a voicemail." If your emails and voicemails aren't being acknowledged, your problem isn't technology, it's technique. Is your message concise and understandable? Have you boiled it down to seem as relevant as possible to the recipient? In other words, is it the opposite of spam or junk mail? All of this really matters if you're a job seeker. But even if you're not, with money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important. For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join the show. You can bring up whatever you want. And the number for you, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Tonight it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
We just had a call about communicating the idea of inflation. He actually used the term that the dollar will become worthless. And it's probably not going to go to zero anytime soon, right? Like even the Venezuelan bolivar, which has been debased beyond belief. If you get a few million of them together, you can still buy a pack of gum. So I mean, they're still worth
you can
something.
get 3 eggs for a billion Zimbabwe dollars.
Yeah, or a trillion, or whatever. Or who's counting?
Yeah.
So you know they're always probably going to be worth something until they're not anymore. I mean they can just abase the hell out of these things. But the truth is the dollar is worth less than it was 10 years ago or even a year ago. So it is constantly becoming worth less. Just that when people hear worthless, they think zero. And odds are it isn't going to jump to zero in 2 weeks. They've got their plans and they've got their means of stretching this thing out as long as they can benefit from it. And you better believe they plan to benefit as much as they can from printing as many dollars into circulation as possible.
And the other thing is, it's been going on for 100 years.
Yeah.
So people are used to the idea that prices just rise over time. But that's not the case in a free society. In a free society, at least the expectation is, as technology increases, if the value of your money stays constant, prices should be falling.
Correct.
And wages should be rising.
And that includes things that you don't think of as technological, right? Like, I mean, we can see it in television sets. That's still happening today. But even like a bottle of rubbing alcohol should be cheaper over time rather than more expensive, because the manufacturing technology becomes more efficient. The supply chain sides become more efficient. And indeed, after you adjust for inflation, and in fact, I think even sometimes in raw numbers or raw prices, things like that are indeed cheaper now than they were years ago. Even the cost of gasoline, for instance, as high as it seems, it's still cheaper than it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. Somebody was
adjusted for inflation, but what they're
not
doing,
even necessarily. I mean, yes, definitely adjusted for inflation, but in some cases, it's actually been cheaper because it had gone as high as $4 a gallon, I think, toward the end of the Bush administration.
70s?
No, $4 a gallon was like within the last 15 years. We were just talking about this the other night.
No, I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't remember it personally, but somebody in the studio checked it, and it was like, I don't know if it was a 2008 or 2009 or something like that, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But so, now $4 a gallon after, that's
because
cheaper.
It went down for a while, and then it kind of shot back up.
Well, it went way down when they were fracking in America. And that was the thing. That's one of the things that upset Venezuela's Apple Cart is all their plans were based on the idea that the price of oil would go up and up and up, and it didn't do that.
Didn't.
Yeah,
there was a bunch of countries
leave it
like
to
that.
a government to put all their eggs in one basket.
By the way, since we are talking about the inflation numbers, even the government's own dishonest numbers that they produce on a monthly basis, one of those numbers is the Producer Price Index. It went up again in January and hit 9.7% for the 12-month period, which is just off of its record high. So incredible high numbers. That's basically the wholesale price index at 9.7%.
Just off its record high for inflation?
I think the record high, this thing's actually only been around since like 2010.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say, in the 1970s, all you heard on TV every time you turned on the news was double-digit unemployment and double-digit inflation.
Yeah, it says it's close to a record, and it may be after adjusting for inflation, because I'm seeing the chart, and I don't see anything even close to 9.7% in the previous decade. So, regardless,
not in the last decade. It's last time we had double-digit inflation, which is just over 9.6, was in the 70s.
So anyway, that's the again official government numbers, and we know the reality is probably very different from that. The reality is probably much higher. So you want to weigh in here, you can. The number is 603-283-6160. But if your loved ones just don't understand what inflation is and they don't seem to care about prices going up, then you're wasting your breath trying to explain it to them. You're better off spending your time researching some cryptocurrencies. So, decide which ones you want to invest into, or getting some gold or silver. Gold, by the way, coming up at record highs as well. Have you seen the price of gold recently? Over $1,900 per ounce. Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, it spiked up, I think, to like $1,930 the other day.
Yeah, all I know is anybody who knows anything about money is going to tell you diversify. That way, when whether it's stocks or stocks go down or whatever, if you've got a nice selection of assets that you've invested in, you're less likely to be impacted as badly.
The only person I can think of who speaks badly about diversification is Warren Buffett. He says diversification is for people who don't know what's going on. Well, most people don't know what's going on.
But the problem is you never...
Because you don't know. The thing is, he's got a direct line from the politicians telling him what they're going to do in advance. They lie to the rest of us.
Yeah, but I mean, even the politicians don't always know exactly what's going to happen. I mean, if
they don't know what's going to happen,
a nuke goes
they know
off,
what they're going to do with Fed rates. They know...
They know they're going to print more money. You can guarantee that.
That's true. But I don't
with
know.
a war, they're going to be printing even more than they were.
Yeah, I mean, there's still some things that are like outside of one's vision, even if you're a government.
Well, yeah, you don't know what all the black swan events might be, but you know they're going to come.
That's racist.
For listeners that don't know, the black swan is the idea of this kind of unusual occurrence, right? Like the idea you don't see black swans very often, but they do happen, they do exist, and there's going to be some sort of unpredicted event. You just don't know exactly what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And it's going to change things in a way that it's hard to predict.
Imagine how much money you could have made if you knew this pandemic was going to happen before it did.
Oh, yeah, you could have invested in the mask companies.
The mask companies, but
or whatever.
Any of the big companies, Walmart, Amazon.
They did very well.
I mean, it made the rich richer and the poor poorer, which I'm quite sure is what it was designed to do.
So back into the denazification, what does that mean? There's an interesting article here by SputnikNews.com, which for listeners that don't know, that's like the alternative to RT. It's another Russian government-funded news site. And so Vladimir Putin has said he wants to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Moscow has repeatedly warned foreign nations about neo-Nazis taking control of Ukraine following the West-backed coup in 2014. But the Western nations choose to ignore the human rights violations committed by the Kyiv regime. So what were those crimes? setting trade unions' house on fire with people in it. As nationalists and neo-Nazis were illegally seizing power across the country, they faced opposition from the so-called anti-Maidan movement, which was against the coup. Clashes between neo-Nazis and anti-Maidan protesters took place across the country, but what happened in Odessa in May of 2014 on the 2nd would be remembered as one of the darkest pages in Ukraine's history. Following street fighting with neo-Nazis, the anti-Maidan protesters barricaded themselves in a local trade union's house. Their opponents, backed by the new Ukrainian authorities, which some say were put into place by the CIA, encircled the building and set it on fire using petrol bombs. When the blaze erupted on the second and third floors of the building, several hundred people trapped inside desperately tried to escape. 10 of them fell to their death. 32 more died suffering from severe burns and suffocating from smoke, and 250 others managed to escape the death trap with various injuries as firefighters arrived at the scene an hour after the blaze broke out. They also say that apart from deploying regular troops to shell the cities of the Donbass region, which we talked about earlier, that was the two eastern states of Ukraine that declared independence that same year of 2014, of the DPR and LPR for short, the new Kyiv leadership attracted several so-called volunteer battalions, ragtag groups of people, often nationalists and ex-convicts, funded and equipped by Ukrainian oligarchs and businessmen with connections to the new government. Their members were often involved in various war crimes, ranging from looting to killing civilians and rape. We'll tell you more about the Russian side of things here in moments, and you can share your thoughts as well. 603-283-6160. What's the truth in Ukraine? You decide. It's Free Talk Live. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington Bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies and organisations that the US has sanctioned this week, some critics had wondered why the United States had not taken the step of sanctioning the Russian leader himself. On Friday, the Biden administration changed that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki making the announcement.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
US President Joe Biden had said for several weeks he was considering sanctions and asset freezes against Putin. But the Western countries have not imposed a travel ban on the Russian leader in order to allow him to travel to any potential talks and keep the door of diplomacy open.
In Kiev,
Лидер фракции тут, голова офису президента тут.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound tonight, assuring people he is still in the Ukrainian capital after Russia's propaganda organs falsely claimed that he'd fled. "We're here. We are defending Ukraine," he said. In Moscow today,
Россия обеспечит демилитаризацию Украины.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov claiming the Kremlin would be open to talks with Ukrainian officials, but later President Putin himself dismissed the idea, urging members of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to turn against President Zelensky and his government. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to fortify the alliance's defences along its eastern flank, and he offered this assessment of the military situation in Ukraine.
The Ukrainian forces are fighting bravely, but again, it is a very fluid and an evolving situation.
A statement by NATO heads of state and government called for an immediate halt to Russia's military assault and the withdrawal of Moscow's forces. Ollie Barrett with more from FSN's London bureau.
The characterization from Boris Johnson, he says it's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Regular listeners will know that a few weeks ago we heard from Matt Fry, presenter and Europe correspondent of the UK's Channel 4 News. He was reporting from the Ukrainian capital Kiev on the mood there as Russian forces began massing on the border. You will not be surprised to learn that he is back in Kiev, waiting and watching for what could be the inevitable arrival of those forces if Vladimir Putin pushes ahead and seeks to topple the Ukrainian government.
What will happen to the people who are living here? Many of them have tried to leave. There was a massive traffic jam this morning of people getting into their cars and just heading west towards the Polish border, which is about a 7-hour drive. It's not a quick drive, and given the level of traffic, it'll probably take a lot longer. But I'm looking at the foreign ministry, for instance, through my window in the hotel where I'm staying, and that could be a target. So far, it's still standing. I'm hoping it carries on that way. I'm looking at the wonderful gold leaf-tipped domes of the gorgeous churches of Kiev, and there's a kind of strange suspension of disbelief about what on earth is going on here right now.
Disbelief in Western capitals as well, where even many seasoned analysts of the Russian president never quite imagined that he would really go ahead with it. But he has, opening the door to a very uncertain future in East-West relations. The main news again, the European Union is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov and freezing their assets. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound in Kiev to discount Russian propaganda reports that he had fled. And President Biden has picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed, she'll become the first black woman justice. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Tomorrow's my big day. I'm going to go in for surgery, and hopefully you'll come along. Now, I do have to admit that I am in a bit of pain, so I'm really looking forward to this procedure. I think we're both going to find out that having surgery just isn't as scary as it sounds.
We're covering our own Jim Haggerty's kidney stone removal surgery, and his surgery is now just minutes away. So, Dr. Atka, tell us what precautions we would take to prevent us from getting kidney stones.
Always stay hydrated. Water helps the kidneys break the stuff down.
Hear that, Jim? More water.
What?
More water. Maybe we should replace your coffee.
Please go away. Please. Ow, no.
That's a camera they're going to use to film the whole surgery from inside Jim's body,
Yes, that's going to be pushed into Jim's urethra as well. Now, normally they wouldn't do this. This is purely for the benefit of us watching it on TV.
All right, stick with us because first he's going to pop into the children's ward to cheer up some youngsters suffering from terminal illnesses.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever you want here. We're kicking off the second hour of the program. Joining you, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris.
And phones are open. You can bring up anything. In fact, all of a sudden, after almost no one on the line in the first hour, the phones just blew up during the news break there, including an international call that came in from a country code I did not recognize, but it is indeed from Ukraine. And Galina is on the line to start things out here this hour. Galina, where are you calling from in Ukraine, if you can say?
Yeah, I'm calling from Kharkiv.
And
Kharkiv is actually an eastern part of Ukraine.
Oh, Kharkiv with a K, with the letter K? Kharkiv?
Yeah, with the letter K. Yeah.
So that is right near Donetsk and Luhansk, which are the two separatist areas that had apparently declared independence back in 2014. Tell us what you were calling about here tonight, if it wasn't obvious. I just want to just give you the open floor here, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you some updates. So here, everything is dark. At night, no streets are light up. Like everybody is under a lockdown.
Mm-hmm.
We're staying at home, since yesterday morning, we are hearing some bombs burst, I guess, or maybe I don't know. Maybe they're shooting from tanks. Not very close to me. Pretty far, I guess, at the border, not in the city yet, but everybody is kind of freaking out a bit. Not me, I'm just staying at home. At least nobody's having COVID anymore.
Right, now they're locking people down for an actual war in this case. Now, as I understand it, there is a curfew in place. Is that nationwide, or is that just in the cities like Kyiv, or is there a curfew where you are?
We have a warrior state in here, over all of the country.
Mm-hmm.
The war techniques is coming closer to the border, and actually Russia is invading not only from Russia but also from Belarus.
Okay.
They attacked Kyiv and some other cities from Belarus. That was unexpected for many of us.
What do you can we go back to 2014 as far as there's a lot of talk from the Russian media that there was a coup that happened in Ukraine in 2014. Some people say the CIA, the American CIA, was involved in making that coup happen, setting into place, puppet dictator types or puppet presidents for the U.S. government. Can were you aware, paying attention to what was going on back in 2014, and can you comment on that?
Yeah, I remember. And can you say what is coup?
A coup, it's like a takeover, a violent takeover from within the government by another faction, typically.
Okay, yeah. So what we had in 2014. So I actually didn't know how it all started because people voted for the president.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people, we had that president for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden they started to be unhappy with what he does, and they wanted to give him impeachment, and what they eventually did. And during that time, on the eastern part of Ukraine, some techniques came from Russia, and people kind of it was shown to us as some people want to be independent from Ukraine.
You're talking about the Donetsk and Luhansk declaring independence?
Yeah, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's it, Donetsk and Luhansk. but Russia helped them because they have the kind of tanks that Ukraine didn't have, that Russia had.
Mm-hmm.
And but some people, they didn't want to be independent from Ukraine. As they saw the war coming, they fled to some other parts. And what happened with Crimea region, what happened with that, they also wanted to be independent, some of the people, not all of them. But Russia helped them, and they are actually not part of Ukraine now. Like,
is Crimea considered its own country, or are they part of Russia now?
I actually don't know. No. They are a part of Russia.
It was.
Yes, they are, because I remember Putin was declaring, like, in 2014, or where they became Russia, like Russia is now taking their old region back, like we are having our Crimea region back to Russia with us as it always was. I remember they declared something like that.
What were you going to say, Chris?
Yeah, so as I understand it, the claim was separatists, Russian-backed separatists invaded Crimea, and then they declared independence, and then that got folded into Russia, so it's part of Russia.
Part of Russia?
Yeah, as I understand it. Again, this is not recognized by the international community, but it is, well,
it's recognized by Russia.
It's effectively part of Russia again, and Russia obviously recognizes it as part of their territory now.
Do you think, Galina, as far as what happened with Donetsk and Luhansk in 2014 declaring independence, do you think that that was legitimate? Do you believe that the people, the majority of the people in those areas did want to separate from, or do want to separate from Ukraine?
I actually don't believe that the majority did want to separate. Maybe it's just some small part, because I guess it's not how it's done. Like if you want independence, you just write a letter into the government, something like that. I just don't know.
Well, they took a vote.
So many people died.
They took a vote, apparently, and they claimed that 89% voted, at least in Donetsk. I don't know about Luhansk, but
that was post-independence.
Well, no, it was they declared it, and they had an election on that May. So they declared it in April of 2014, and then they had a vote on it in May of 2014. But of course, the other side says that the vote was illegitimate, and it was stacked with false ballots and
It wasn't a vote under the Ukrainian government; it was a vote under the new government.
Well, like. When we vote here in New Hampshire, whether the U.S. government acknowledges that as legitimate or not will be a whole other question. So ultimately, my curiosity is, Galina, do you think it was legitimate? And it sounds like you don't think that it was.
Yeah, I don't think it was.
Okay.
I don't think it was.
I mean, what's the definition of legitimate?
Legal.
Yeah.
That's what that means. Galina, now you're in Kharkiv, which is just sort of to the northwest of the Donbas province there. Are there a lot of Russian speakers where you live?
Yeah, most of people are Russian speakers.
Most of them?
A lot of people, most of them, yeah. But actually we have a lot of Russian speakers in Kyiv already. Like half Ukrainian, half Russian. But here, most of people are speaking Russian, but almost none of them, they really want to be with Russia. Like they still stay like patriots of Ukraine. Like
I see. So even though they speak Russian, they speak Russian. That doesn't mean that they want to join Russia. It doesn't mean they want to be back under the rule of Putin. That's what you're saying.
Well, we speak English.
Yeah, that's
That's a good point. Galina, so as far as the invasion is concerned, the Russian media, Vladimir Putin claiming that they're in there to quote unquote de-Nazify the Ukrainian government. Do you believe that there are Nazis that are running the Ukrainian government?
No, that's crazy. Like, and also I've heard in some news that Putin said that Ukraine actually invaded Russia, and now Russia is coming here to calm us down.
Galina, I don't know if is this phone call costing you an arm and a leg, or can we hold on to you and keep you on for another segment?
No, No, it's not costing. I have like 3 minutes.
Okay, great. Hang on here. I'm going to see if we can keep Galena on. Anybody has a question for her, you can call in, and we're going to bring her back. She's calling us from Kharkiv in Ukraine, where it's probably early in the morning.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Free Talk Live, the show where anyone can call about whatever they want. And we do mean anyone.
Jesus Christ visited every tribe in America.
In America?
She's America, absolutely. There's a book that came out.
He got around, didn't he?
He was in India.
How did he
China.
get from point A to point B?
He had quite a life.
In a boat.
So they took a boat from the Middle East all the way over to North America?
Absolutely. Archaeologists went and visited different tribes and followed their myths and stuff. And none of them used the name Jesus, but they all described him as a white man with long brown hair and a beard.
Well, now, why is it that Jesus is white? That's what I want to understand.
How did a white guy get born to a bunch of Sephardic Jews, is what I want to know.
No.
Well, God's white, so I mean, that's how.
Of course he is.
Was the Immaculate Conception. He could make that baby whatever color he wanted to.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
This is Free Talk Live, and you can bring up whatever is on your mind here. The phones are open at 603-283-6160. We are grateful to have a caller on the line here who is actually in Ukraine, calling from Kharkiv, which apparently is the second largest city in Ukraine with about 1.4 million population. It has as many people living in its city as New Hampshire does, the entire state of New Hampshire. And so we're going to go back to her call and her thoughts, but of course your thoughts are welcome. Again, 603-283-6160. And I do want to let you know about Freedom's Phoenix. It's a liberty-oriented news aggregation site. If you want the newest and freshest stories and perspectives on current events from those who value liberty, then freedomsphoenix.com has them. They've got a daily dispatch, which is a great way to stay up to date on science, technology, historical findings, liberty news, government overspending, and the rise of the police state. You can go to freedomsphoenix.com. That's freedomsphoenix.com. We go back to Galina calling us from Kharkiv, kind of giving her perspective on what's been happening in Ukraine. We asked her about the 2014 coup, the takeover in the government, and the declarations of independence in the nearby regions of the states that have since, supposedly declared themselves independent, the Donetsk and Luhansk republics now. And it was Putin who was claiming that he was not invading Ukraine so much as he was going in to defend these independent nations that he has now recognized.
You can tell he's defending them because he's dropping bombs on them.
Well, I think he would say that he's dropping bombs on military targets in other cities now in Ukraine to protect the interests of these independent nations. At least that's the official line. Now, Galina, you unfortunately are, sitting there in the second most populated city there in Ukraine. Are you hiding? They're saying, the mainstream media is saying people are hiding in basements because they're, obviously concerned about bombs being dropped and that sort of thing. What is it like there right now for you?
So many people, they went to some other regions where they don't hear the burst. Really, lots of people, like, they packed suitcases, especially those who have children, and they just ran away. I am actually sitting in my apartment, but some people, they hide in the basements. That's true, like, because I look what happens out of the window, and yesterday many people from the neighboring building, they went to the basement. I'm not sure if it's a good idea because, they say if the bomb drops on your building, then you're going to be buried under that building. If you're in,
I don't know if there's a good place to do. Yeah, where's the best place to be if a bomb drops on your building? I suspect nowhere.
Someplace else.
Yeah, exactly.
Out to lunch.
There have been reports that the government gang there in Ukraine has refused to allow men up to age 60 to leave the country, because there's obviously a lot of people that are trying to exit into Poland and other surrounding areas to, as refugees, essentially to get the hell out. But they're now apparently saying that the men are not allowed to leave. Do you believe that there is a draft? Is there a draft going on, or is that imminent? Is that coming soon?
I'm sure they could forbid some people to leave the country. That's true, because when it's wartime, the army needs men. And what was in 2014, they have this thing called mobilization, where when the army calls up all the people, like from 18 to 27, or 18 to 35, or maybe 18 to 65. It depends on the situation. And the husband of my sister, he went in 2014. He went to that war that they had. He returned alive, but some people did not.
And you say they call that mobilization? The word for that in your country is mobilization?
That means to mobilize. I don't know.
No, I understand I understand the word. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's interesting, the different words. So in the United States, the term they use is the draft, and that's where they take people who previously had not been in the military, and they say, well, kid, you're in the military now. Here's a gun, and we're going to tell you what to do. And those of us who are freedom lovers, we oppose the draft. Even in the idea of wartime, people should be able to join voluntarily if that's something that they want to do. What's the situation there with the internet right now? Has any internet connections been cut? I presume you're calling us over an internet connection right now. Do you have access to online?
I have access today. Yesterday morning, I woke up, got message from my coworker that we don't work today. Was thinking, all right, gonna have a nice quiet day at home. Opened my laptop and realized that there's no internet. But it got back till at night. It got back yesterday night, and today I have internet. Everything is fine.
Okay, good.
And I'm calling you not from the internet, just from my mobile.
Oh wow. Okay. How did you? Are you a listener of Free Talk Live previously? Have you listened to this show for some time, or are you new to the program? What's your history with us?
Yeah, I was listening to your show for a couple of years now. I started when it was, I guess, 2020 when the coronavirus started.
Ah, okay.
I didn't believe in all that shit.
We can't let you say that on the radio. I'm gonna just dump your call there for a moment. We have rules in the United States. The FCC doesn't let you say the S word. So most calls I would have to drop the call, but since you're pretty unusual, I definitely want to make sure we continue with you here. But yeah, so you didn't believe in the coronavirus crackdowns, and so that's how you found the show. That's what you were trying to say, and so kudos to you for that. Guys, you've been listening pretty quietly here to Galina. Do you have questions for her that I didn't cover?
Yeah. I'm kind of curious about the denazification thing. Isn't the president of Ukraine Jewish?
I'm not sure. Nobody knows. A lot
Interesting.
of people in Ukraine may be Jewish in some part of their genetics, but that's fine.
Okay, so it might be. That's interesting. So this might actually be propaganda from like the Western side, maybe.
So what in Russia there are lots of Jews as well. In Moscow, like that's.
Okay. Yeah. I think I was aware of that.
Yeah, the mainstream media is definitely claiming he is Jewish. So
yeah, right.
That's definitely out there. Nobody, any questions for Galina?
No, I'm interested in listening.
Galina, what else did you want to share with our audience tonight?
Is Aria coming on air sometime?
Actually, yes. She is planning to be back. She had an operation. She had throat surgery, and so was unable to actually speak for a number of weeks. She believes she is ready to return to the air, so we're going to have her back on Monday. Nobody, you're still welcome to join us on Monday night, so it'll be the three of us.
I wonder what it's like to be around Ari and she's not talking.
So Galina, thank you for the call tonight. Feel free to continue to call us with updates from there in Ukraine. Definitely appreciate it, and feel free to call in on Monday when Ari is back with us. We got more coming up. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Karl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies and organizations that the US has sanctioned this week, some critics had wondered why the United States had not taken the step of sanctioning the Russian leader himself. On Friday, the Biden administration changed that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki making the announcement.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
US President Joe Biden had said for several weeks he was considering sanctions and asset freezes against Putin. But the Western countries have not imposed a travel ban on the Russian leader in order to allow him to travel to any potential talks and keep the door of diplomacy open.
In Kiev,
Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound tonight, assuring people he is still in the Ukrainian capital after Russia's propaganda organs falsely claimed that he'd fled. "We're here. We are defending Ukraine," he said. In Moscow today,
Россия обеспечит демилитаризацию Украины.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov claiming the Kremlin would be open to talks with Ukrainian officials, but later President Putin himself dismissed the idea, urging members of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to turn against President Zelensky and his government. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to fortify the alliance's defences along its eastern flank, and he offered this assessment of the military situation in Ukraine.
The Ukrainian forces are fighting bravely, but again, it is a very fluid and an evolving situation.
A statement by NATO heads of state and government called for an immediate halt to Russia's military assault and the withdrawal of Moscow's forces. Ollie Barrett with more from FSN's London bureau.
The characterization from Boris Johnson, he says it's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything that you want. We're talking about Ukraine. We're talking with a Ukrainian just a few moments ago. And Galena had called in from Kharkiv, and hopefully we will continue to hear from her. Hopefully nothing bad will transpire in her vicinity. But it is the second largest city in all of Ukraine. So best wishes to her and anybody out there that's listening to us, and thank you for joining the show. The number again, 603-283-6160. Trying to get a feel for the different sides, the different opinions, the different propaganda that is out there, because it is important, I think, to take in both sides and try to get some semblance of what the truth might be, because it's probably not either one side or the other. It's probably somewhere out there in between or something completely different. So your opinion,
whatever the truth is, you're not going to get it from our government.
No doubt. So you're welcome to join us. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. We're going to go back to your phone calls and thoughts here. We'll start out with Olivia, who's been waiting patiently in Arizona. Olivia, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey guys, that was a really awesome call by Galena. I hope she continues to call in, because it's really interesting to hear from a real person there.
Yeah, yeah, it gets pretty tiresome to just have to rely on mainstream media and government propaganda.
Exactly. So Galena, please continue to call. I love your call. And also, nobody, I'm so excited to see you.
I think she said she's so excited to see you. Nobody.
Oh.
She cut off there a second.
It's good to hear your voice too. I missed you when you weren't calling. And then, of course, I wasn't on for a while.
Right, for like 9 months.
For a while,
Something
yeah.
like that.
That was understatement.
Olivia, do we lose you? Are you still there? Yep, she got cut off. Feel free to call back. We definitely did not hang up that line.
I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, no, Bonnie would read quotes by nobody. Just wasn't the same. I'm glad she did, but it wasn't the same.
Yeah, it was nice having a little bit of nobody flavor in the show, though. So Bonnie did a real good job doing that research on those quotes.
I really appreciated her doing that.
Yeah,
too.
it was really a nice touch. What were you calling about, Olivia, tonight? Besides, welcoming nobody back.
Oh, I was calling about same thing as everyone else. Inflation. It's been really distressing going to the store and seeing the prices go up every time, and it's something that like I've talked about with everyone I've talked to. We're all saying the same thing. Like, how is this? What are we supposed to do? And
buy crypto.
Yeah. Say that again.
Buy crypto.
I don't know if it was yesterday, but Ian had talked about inflation just means they're printing more money.
That's right.
And I was just wondering, like, where's it all going? Because I haven't really seen any of it. Nobody
yeah. You won't get much of it at all.
I mean, you got a little bit of it, or most people did. Inflation takes time to hit.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years ago, when COVID started, they printed out like $750 million, or
it was like $2 trillion or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, they printed out like a fraction of a trillion, gave it to the American people. Then they printed out $3 trillion and handed it out to corporations.
Correct. Yeah.
I was gonna say, wasn't it the politicians' buddies that they mostly handed it to?
Yeah.
The medicine industrial complex, the military industrial complex.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah, the little the crumbs for us were just so we'd shut up while they paid off their buddies handsomely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't understand what their buddies are doing with it. They have more money than they could spend in 10
Well, they spend it.
They're buying super yachts.
Yeah, they're buying
they're
things
paying
with
whoever's replaced Epstein. They're
yeah, I mean that money is likely being spent on things, and eventually it will trickle its way down into the rest of the economy, and thereby, all of the prices tend to go up as a result of having more dollars chasing the same amount of goods. Or in the case of supply issues, you actually have more dollars chasing a smaller amount of goods in the country today, because there's just not enough logistics out there at the moment, because we had one trucker call in the other night saying that he doesn't want to work because they're lowering the rates on him.
Wow.
And so he's not willing to...
Wait, what?
It's contrary to what I've heard. I've heard that they're paying truckers through the nose these days, but this guy said the opposite was true, and that he said they're not offering him enough to come to work. So he's not bothering. He's going to go and join the convoy instead.
That's insane. You would think that they would be paying. Why? You know what's crazy is I'm paying more for shipping.
Mm-hmm.
So how is it that truckers are getting less?
I don't know.
Well,
it's just what he said.
I mean, they manipulate the economy a lot. Big business.
I think.
does,
I mean,
and
somebody's got to
government.
Somebody's got to be
helps.
profiting, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, somebody is. Yeah. Well, the gas prices are going up, so
part of it's
more
going
to operate
the gas.
the
That makes
truck.
sense.
And the supply chain issues, I don't think they're an accident.
No, definitely not.
Somebody wants that for some reason. I don't know what it is.
Olivia, did we answer your question?
That was a great answer. I had one other thing to say to your earlier caller, Sam.
Mm-hmm.
For not financial advice, I'm not a professional, but for his relatives who do the stock market, Nancy Tracker on Gab.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about. Yeah.
What is it?
It follows Nancy Pelosi's husband's stock trades, and because she beats the market by like
right, because she's an insider.
Yeah, she does insider trading, but they don't prosecute her like they do some people.
Of course not. Hey, that's an interesting.
It's legal
tip
for Congress to do insider trading.
Of course it is.
And they actually asked Nancy Pelosi about that, and she defended it. She said it's a free market, which, considering that she's a government official making it not free,
it's free for her.
That
reminds me.
She's free.
Yeah, that
not
reminds
the
me of the cops in Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. In one scene, one of the cop talks about how he feels free. He's free, and it's like, yeah, you might be, but the rest of us aren't. Thanks, Olivia, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. Let's go to we got Chuck on the line in Washington State. Chuck, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't get a chance to ask your caller from Ukraine a question I think that everybody would be interested in. My question for her would be, and I hope she's still listening, and maybe she could call in and give us an account of the kind of preparation on the battlefield that she observed in her local community prior to the events that we're all talking about today. What I mean by that is, did she see Russian propagandist type of campaign activity out there on the streets prior to this assault that's occurring right now? I think it's a valid question. And I'll follow this up by a comment. I think that David Olson from New Mexico should tell everybody how he spells his last name, because I don't think he's a Jew.
Okay. Thanks for the call tonight, Chuck. Appreciate the question.
Well, I'd go find out if he's a Jew, but I'm paralyzed by not caring very much.
Let's go to Dave Ridley is on the line from RidleyReport.com. Ridley, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, guys.
Yes, go ahead.
I did something today that some people are kind of seem to be saying I maybe shouldn't have done, and that was I released a statement on behalf of NHExit.com, which is basically just me.
That's your website.
A statement related to the Ukraine crisis and New Hampshire independence.
All right. And what was it? You want to summarize it?
Yeah, a couple points. First of all, I mean, obviously the Russian government, this is an all-out conventional warfare attack. Like that's not done except by, it's not recently.
Yeah.
So that's it's wildly excessive, whatever their legitimate grievances might be. And the initial success of it is an the initial success of it is an indication that Washington cannot be relied on to protect New Hampshire, because look how much they did. They shipped them all these weapons, they did all this training. And
hold that thought, Ridley. I want you to continue. We'll flesh this out here in a discussion with Dave Ridley from RidleyReport.com, the creator over at NHExit.com, which is different from NHExit.org, different from NHExit.us.
Decentralized movement,
there are multiple...
We're balkanized in our secession movement.
More coming up here in moments. You can share your thoughts as well on Ukraine or whatever's on your mind. It's Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
Who told you to go this way? You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring silence to their rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey.
Who do you think you are?
Excuse me.
There is no video and audio allowed in this hospital.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Whoa. Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up anything you want. That's 603-283-6160. We've been talking off and on tonight about Ukraine and Russia. We actually had a lady call in from Kharkiv, which is the second largest city in Ukraine. With you tonight, it's Ian, Nobody, and Chris. And coming up, I definitely want to get into something you brought in tonight, Chris, which is this Ruby on Rails thing, which is... Oh, sorry, you're muted accidentally there. Sorry.
Yeah, the developer.
Who's, I guess, fairly well-known developer person. He has changed his opinion about Bitcoin in a big way.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that. And for good reasons, too.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it. That's on the way. But right now, we've got Dave Ridley. He's on the line with us from RidleyReport.com. And Ridley, you are one of the creators over at nhexit.com. You made a statement today about Ukraine, and you were kind of getting into that with us. Can you kind of recap for our listeners just tuning in?
Yeah, first thing, the Russian reaction is excessive, way excessive, completely wrong. The initial success of it is an indication that Washington cannot protect New Hampshire because it obviously can't protect Ukraine. And the third thing, the Ukraine government
Ukraine paid Biden a lot of money.
Ukraine has made the invasion practical by all its gun control laws. They only have 7 guns in the hands of civilians per 100 persons.
Wow.
That's compared to probably about 130 in New Hampshire per 100. It's 120, I think, on average.
Wait, it's 130 per 100 people in New Hampshire? Is that what you just said?
Roughly. It's 120.
All right. Somebody's going to have some spares.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Now, to their credit, the Ukrainian government figured this out at the last minute and has finally authorized all its people, I think, to be armed pretty much wherever they go.
Sure, but they're also going to draft the males into the military.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like they care about freedom. They just care about protecting their government.
up until this week, according to Wikipedia, they were not allowing fighting-age males to have firearms, basically, as best I could tell, unless they were in the military. So, but of course, again, it's so complicated. Washington has provoked Moscow by moving NATO closer and closer to Moscow's border, which they have reason to be scared. Joe Biden just said this thing that was ridiculous. He said, quote, Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences, unquote, which just blew his opportunity to help divide Putin from the Russian people. He was just throwing the Russian people into the fire as though they were all guilty for this, which they are absolutely not.
They're the ones who are going to be suffering under these sanctions.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me about your New Hampshire comment. It's like, whether the government is going to protect New Hampshire, they're not going to protect me, right? I think it's kind of what you have to remember about this. Russia's not going to protect its citizens. It's going to protect its in governmental interests.
Yeah, it's going to protect military bases, government buildings, and politicians' houses.
Yeah.
They killed 1 million people in Iraq because Iraq was ruled by the wrong tyrant. Those people didn't have any choice that they killed. I've got a happy thought for you, though, Dave. I wanted to share it with you. Just before the raid, I had finished downloading your entire video collection from YouTube onto my on my 3 terabyte drive, and so somewhere at the FBI, some poor bastard is listening to every word you ever published, and I'm waiting for him to show up in New Hampshire and go,
say sorry.
All right, I changed my mind.
Thanks, Rich. I hadn't forgotten that you'd done that. I told quite a few people that you did that. And yeah, with any luck, that will actually survive their archiving process, and someday it'll come back. And there are other sort of crude archives of it too, so it's not all going to be lost when they come for all of the things we've said. But I did have one other thing is it's important to have solutions, and the suggested solution I have is for New Hampshire to peaceably declare independence from the U.S., as it was already planning on doing. That has a side effect of taking us off the nuclear target list, but we keep faith with the current allies that New Hampshire has by giving them a chance to remain allies with New Hampshire, by saying, okay, you have the chance to remain allies with us if you eliminate your gun control laws. You don't expect us to tax our people to help you, but then we can stay allies. But man, tell you what, we should never be allied again with another nation that controls its people's guns.
I say free trade with all nations and tangling alliances with none.
Good advice. Hey, Ridley, thanks for the call tonight. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, starting from scratch, of course, that would be fine. But right now, if like New Hampshire were right now to just turn its back on Europe or declare neutrality, that would be perceived as backstabbing and as helping the Russians. And so I think there has to be an untangling process.
Huh.
Why would it be?
Well, there's a lot of distance between us and the Russians.
I don't know if it would be presumed
for which
that
I am very pleased.
New Hampshire would have the same allies upon secession from the United States. I don't see any reason to presume that we're just going to take the list from the U.S. government and say, all right, well, these are our allies and these aren't. Yeah. And I think that we would have a clean slate immediately upon independence.
I don't think we'd have any allies, to be honest.
Yeah, we would have to work for anything.
It's like imagining.
Sorry,
imagine what it would. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We would have to work for any kind of international recognition.
Yeah.
I mean, that we wouldn't just be able to knock on their door and say, "Hey, buddy," we'd have to ask real nice like and say, "Hey,
It's one thing for people to trade with us; it's another thing to recognize us officially.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's likely the world would just take this off of our agenda and make it easy for us by refusing to comply with these demands. No problem. We can be independent and neutral. No problem in that case. But imagine, if you were to transport yourself back to 1939 and pick that moment, right, or 1942, to pick that moment to separate from the United States and try and reorganize the defense right in the middle of a war. It's very difficult to do that without being perceived as the backstabber helping the big aggressor like Russia is right now.
Thank you for the call tonight, Dave. I appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Your thoughts are welcome. We go to Tom calling us from New Hampshire. You're on Free Talk Live, Tom.
Wednesday evening, the Hudson Police Station was open housed. They were giving tours because there's a ballot question for the town's voters on renovations and how to remodel the place for more space. And so I went there and I asked a couple of questions while I was in a guided tour group. And they're explaining what the proposed renovations would be, and you give them a tour, and then voters will know when they go to vote on March 8th. Now, they used to have just one detective division years ago when the joint was first built, and they're saying now there's 3 divisions, and one of them is the narcotics detectives division, and they're going to be assigned their own room over here, and they're showing the map of the place. And I asked the question, well, if they're short on space, why don't they just simply discontinue drug enforcement altogether, and then they can use that space for crimes with the victims?
Nice question.
Cocaine,
I like the way you think.
Any. And the enemy agent replied about other crimes, because if you're using fentanyl, if you're using OxyContin, then you're going to be committing these other crimes, and instead of prosecuting you for those crimes that have a victim, they'd rather prosecute you for the victimless crime, the peaceful action of abusing certain harmful drugs.
Yeah, they just want to make their job easier. That's why they outlaw. That's why we have these possession laws, right? It's because it's a lot easier to charge you with possession and get a conviction than it is to charge you with like an actual violent crime.
If OxyContin was as cheap as it would be without the war on drugs, which is about 50 cents a dose, then people wouldn't need to commit crimes for it any more than they need to commit crimes for cigarettes, which they rarely do. And furthermore, they'd probably be taking it enough that they were incapable to get off the couch and commit a crime.
Tom, did you have more highlights from the tour that you wanted to share?
Yes.
All right, hang on. We'll continue here in moments. The number is 603-283-6160. Sounds like it was pretty entertaining with Tom along for the tour in that particular case. 603-283-6160. I bet they didn't expect those kind of questions. More coming up here. Kudos to him for being willing to ask them in the bowels of the beast. Hour 3 is on the way. It's Free Talk Live. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies and organisations that the US has sanctioned this week, some critics had wondered why the United States had not taken the step of sanctioning the Russian leader himself. On Friday, the Biden administration changed that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki making the announcement.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
US President Joe Biden had said for several weeks he was considering sanctions and asset freezes against Putin. But the Western countries have not imposed a travel ban on the Russian leader in order to allow him to travel to any potential talks and keep the door of diplomacy open.
In Kyiv,
Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound tonight, assuring people he is still in the Ukrainian capital after Russia's propaganda organs falsely claimed that he'd fled. We're here. We are defending Ukraine, he said. In Moscow today,
Россия обеспечит демилитаризацию Украины.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov claiming the Kremlin would be open to talks with Ukrainian officials, but later President Putin himself dismissed the idea, urging members of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to turn against President Zelensky and his government. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to fortify the alliance's defences along its eastern flank, and he offered this assessment of the military situation in Ukraine.
The Ukrainian forces are fighting bravely, but again, it is a very fluid and an evolving situation.
A statement by NATO heads of state and government called for an immediate halt to Russia's military assault and the withdrawal of Moscow's forces. Ollie Barrett with more from FSN's London bureau.
The characterization from Boris Johnson, he says it's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Regular listeners will know that a few weeks ago we heard from Matt Fry, presenter and Europe correspondent of the UK's Channel 4 News. He was reporting from the Ukrainian capital Kyiv on the mood there as Russian forces began massing on the border. You will not be surprised to learn that he is back in Kyiv, waiting and watching for what could be the inevitable arrival of those forces if Vladimir Putin pushes ahead and seeks to topple the Ukrainian government.
What will happen to the people who are living here? Many of them have tried to leave. There was a massive traffic jam this morning of people getting into their cars and just heading west towards the Polish border, which is about a 7-hour drive. It's not a quick drive, and given the level of traffic, it'll probably take a lot longer. But I'm looking at the foreign ministry, for instance, through my window in the hotel where I'm staying, and that could be a target. So far, it's still standing. I'm hoping it carries on that way. I'm looking at the wonderful gold leaf-tipped domes of the gorgeous churches of Kyiv, and there's a kind of strange suspension of disbelief about what on earth is going on here right now.
Disbelief in Western capitals as well, where even many seasoned analysts of the Russian president never quite imagined that he would really go ahead with it. But he has, opening the door to a very uncertain future in East-West relations. The main news again, the European Union is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov and freezing their assets. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound in Kiev to discount Russian propaganda reports that he had fled. And President Biden has picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the U.S. Supreme Court. If confirmed, she'll become the first black woman justice. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Millions of Americans are irrationally feared dead following a train derailment near Wilmington, Delaware.
Less than 200 people were aboard the train, but because no names have been released yet, countless more are being imagined trapped inside the wreckage by worried parents and overly anxious friends.
And the list of imagined victims is growing by the minute. From brothers-in-law who live in Delaware, who usually drive but could possibly have been on that train, to friends who went to Delaware on a business trip and may have been next to the tracks for some reason when the train derailed.
And sadly, we're getting reports that even those who have never been to Delaware are now also among those irrationally thought killed.
Oh, and we are just now getting word from Homeland Security that they're now warning people their fears may spiral into a wholly new fear that their loved ones never existed at all and are just byproducts of a drug-induced lucid dream in which their consciousness is currently imprisoned.
Such a shame, since this is reality.
There is nothing beyond this. To believe otherwise would be folly.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. Phones are open. You can join us here. We're kicking off the third hour. The number is 603-283-6160. Here tonight, it's Ian.
Nobody.
And Chris. This is Free Talk Live. The number again, 603-283-6160. Busy night on the phones here. We've been talking primarily about Ukraine. We actually had a Ukrainian woman call in from Kharkiv earlier tonight. And, of course, you can bring up whatever you want to discuss. We're actually going to continue a phone call from the last hour. If you're just tuning in, we had Tom on the line in New Hampshire who was telling us about a visit that he made to the police department in his town in New Hampshire. And the reason for this visit was the police department is asking for, I'm sure, some number of millions of dollars. And apparently in the town, it has to go on up to a vote. It's not like a city council that can just vote for it on the council. The people of the town have to approve this.
Nice.
And so they are having the open house where you can show up and they'll give you a tour of the police station. They'll tell you where they want to spend the money that they're asking the townspeople to approve.
They really ought to sell off the cocaine in their evidence locker. That ought to cover it.
And Tom is somebody who is a critic of the police, and he wants to see an end to the war on drugs. So when they started talking about, on the tour that you went on, Tom, when they started talking about how they want to expand the drug division into its own area, or the drug detectives to have their own special room, you asked them a tough question. Can you recap that question for us?
Well, yeah, if they're tight on space here, why don't they just shut down drug enforcement altogether, and then they could use that room for crimes that have victims, and, because if they're selling cocaine, then you don't have to buy any.
And you said the cop that was giving the tour dodged the question by claiming that, well, they also investigate crimes with victims because sometimes drug users will break and enter a house or hold up a convenience store and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but they end up with...
And it went on to say that when they're breaking into people's houses, they're not doing it to pay the electric bill.
Yeah, we end up with more so-called criminals when they, create possession laws and similar, because ultimately you end up with arresting people who also, even though they take drugs, aren't necessarily going to commit violent crime, which probably is most drug users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a couple other episode highlights of the visit when they were showing us where the restrooms were and where they would be. I asked, did you hear about the time a toilet got stolen out of a police station, and detectives had nothing to go on.
How many other people were on this tour with you, by the way?
Like about 8 other people in this particular group. Okay, and then went to the locker room, the women's locker room, and they're telling us where renovations would be made there. And I asked, now, is this for the ones that really are women, or is this also for, like men that are disappointed that they're not a woman, so they pretend to be a woman? And the answer is, with the remodeling, they have to have 3 locker rooms. I said, what, men, women, and undecided? And, pretty much under the Americans with Disabilities Act, that's what they got to do now.
So what was the amount of millions of dollars? I'm just guessing it was millions. What are they looking for from taxpayers for this?
$1 million and change, $1.something million for the renovations.
And how many police agents does the town of Hudson, which is one of the larger towns as far as population, if I recall correctly, in New Hampshire, how many agents does it have?
55, they said,
Wow.
more or less. So, yeah, I think I'm going to vote against it.
All right. Thanks for the call tonight, Tom. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to hear it.
The number here is
as long as they've got a drug enforcement task force, they've got more budget than they need.
We go to, in fact, they make their own budgets in a lot of cases because of all the drug seizures, and they get to auction that stuff off, and they make a ton of money that way. We go to Jack calling us from Washington State. Jack, you're on Free Talk Live.
How many of you guys were part of the crime spree, the victim of crime spree at your studio?
I was there.
Yeah, I was certainly there for it. Derek says I was one of his inspirations for moving here.
Did you feel like you were kind of like molested in a weird kind of way by the government attacking you?
I've been molested many times by the government. We had a doctor in the Cheshire County Jail. We used to call him Dr. Touch because you'd go to him with a sprained ankle and he'd want you to turn your head and cough. It's like, man. Doc, I'm pretty sure it's not a hernia.
Subject right there. Holy smokes.
Okay, thank you.
My comparison is to Ukraine. There's a certain government within your system at your studio, whether you know it or not, whether it be Captain Kick Butt or whatever. And, Ukraine, you want to laugh at them here and there, but if you follow it pretty closely, they're being molested right now, and they're handing out guns to old women. And I don't think you guys have looked into it very much. I love you guys.
What do you mean we haven't looked into it? We've been covering Ukraine for the last few days. In depth, as much as we possibly can. We were already talking about how they were handing out guns last night.
I'm just saying that, when people invade your property, even sometimes if it's a government, and some of these governments are very immature. They are not, at the level of the power, the United States, China. They're virgins, if you will, and they're being molested. I don't know why I'm going.
I'm not sure what you're saying. Are you saying the Ukrainian government is immature?
We should root for Ukraine in this battle. People are dying.
Why would you root for a criminal enterprise?
Because just like if somebody came into your home or your studio and attacked you, you should want to defend it.
But I'm not a criminal enterprise.
According to the government, you are.
Well, they're a bunch of liars. They're the ones who actually murder people. They're the ones who actually drop bombs on innocent people. They drop bombs, dude. They kill people.
I certainly wish the best for the people of the Ukraine. I don't care whether their government lives or dies. And I don't care if Putin's government lives or dies.
This goes back to what I was saying earlier about New Hampshire and how we're not actually, even if the United States would protect New Hampshire, it's not going to protect us, the people of New Hampshire.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You were saying something there about research, Jack? Go ahead.
New Hampshire is not going to separate from the United States government, man.
Why not?
Well, we'll keep working on it.
How do you know?
If at first you don't secede.
Why is it impossible?
I wish it would. I root for it. I wish it would happen.
I'm pretty sure.
You remember when it was impossible to escape the Soviet Union?
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it was impossible for the colonies to escape Britain too at the time. That was a bigger empire than the United States is today.
There were definitely people who said this is insane. You can't do this.
They were in another land, my friend. That is not true. They weren't within Britain.
Okay, it's all just imaginary, you know. We're very far away from Washington, D.C.
Once again, I wish that New Hampshire and every other state could separate. I'm
well, you
not
don't really
against
wish.
it.
You don't believe
Yes,
it's possible.
I do.
So
I
if you
know
want
I-
to
I
want to
did
see
that.
something come to fruition, you have to believe in it for it to happen.
Yeah.
The U.S. government isn't going to last forever.
Yeah, it doesn't even matter if it's. I think maybe it's more. You're talking about the feasibility of it, and even if it's not feasible today, that doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't be talking about it, and that it won't.
Right.
It could be feasible tomorrow, right? But it won't be feasible tomorrow if you don't start talking about it today.
Yeah,
So.
it will only be feasible if people believe it's feasible. That's the only time it'll ever happen,
Yeah.
if people actually believe it can happen. As you point out, no government lasts forever.
Yeah. Nobody in the CIA saw the fall of the Soviet Union coming. So why would we expect them to see the fall of the United States empire coming?
Indeed.
Yeah, I mean, even the union leader had a poll, just a general poll, right? And it had something. I'm trying to think what the numbers were now. It was like something like 71 to 76%, depending on when you looked, of the people of New Hampshire supported independence. So
It peaked at over 80% at one point.
it got up to 80%. I only
it
saw
was
it up
over
to
80%.
76.
It came down after it peaked
Yeah.
at that.
Well, anyway, the point that I'm making is that there may be way more support here than we perceive. So
Thank you, Jack, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. And if you think we haven't done enough research, then the phones are open and you can call in and tell us what we're wrong about or whatever. But I'm with nobody on this. I'm not going to support a criminal enterprise, and every government on the planet are people who use violence against others. The Ukrainian government is now using violence against its own people to prevent them from leaving a war zone. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at mymagicmud.com. FTL20 mymagicmud.com. Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. It's bitcoin.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
Yep, it's Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you in the studio tonight, you've got Ian.
And nobody formerly known as Rich Paul.
And Chris.
We're going to continue with more of your phone calls and thoughts. Of course, you can bring up whatever's on your mind. Plus, coming up, a major programmer in the world of computer programming has changed his mind about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. We'll explain what happened here in moments. But first, we're going to go to your phone calls and thoughts. First up, Major Payne is on the line, calling from Michigan. You're on Free Talk Live, Major Payne.
Hey, good evening, fellas.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Oh, nobody. Good to have you back. I've
Thanks.
always warned
Good to be
against
back.
going sailing with the tidy bowl, man, so I'm glad you didn't go down with the ship.
All right, what you got?
So, anyway, there's a couple of boxers that were evidently, I haven't followed boxing very closely, but they were quite famous over here, a couple of brothers. And one of them's evidently the mayor of Kiev, or however, whichever way you want to enunciate it. Kiev, I think is the way they pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
But and his brother is like the chief of police or something. But anyway, they got pictures of them today, and they're all in Kevlar and bullets and ready to go. And come on, Putin, bring it.
Mm-hmm.
And so Russian hype being what it is, I'm wondering when the pictures are going to show up of shirtless Putin with a couple of bandoleros of bullets and a knife in his teeth riding a horse in front of his tanks.
Yeah, they already had those pictures, didn't they, a few years ago with Putin shirtless riding a horse?
Yeah, they had him shirtless fly fishing, and he just thinks he's the cat's meow.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
He's a legend in his own mind.
There you go, brother.
Thanks, Major Payne, for the call tonight. I appreciate it. Let's talk to Sarah in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live. Sarah.
Yes. Okay, there was a caller yesterday. Was that guy that just called in? I don't know. He's the one that mentioned that when President Obama was in office, the Ukrainians asked for help because they were fighting back and forth for 8 years. And what he said was that Obama sent them boxes of blankets and some cans of Band-Aid. What they were asking for was artilleries and ammunition and bombs and guns. So that's what I sent him. I don't really know how true it is, but it makes sense because you know that Obama had signatures in communist parties in America. They have, they have a signing sheet, and then he signed up when they attended these communist party meetings. And no wonder he could care less if the Russians won.
Okay, let me see if I'm following what you're saying here. You're saying, because you have to understand Sarah's call in the context of her other phone calls. If you're a brand new listener, you have no idea what she's referring to. Sarah is a communist, and she believes that Vladimir Putin is secretly a communist, and that the Russian government is a communist secret government, so secretly they're a communist government, and that they should...
Impossible. Nobody's starving in Russia anymore.
Right. So, but that's what she believes, and so you're saying that because Obama is, in your mind, a communist, that therefore he did not want to help... Hold on, I'm just trying to explain your call as I understand it. You can tell me if I've got it right. So therefore, because Obama is also a secret communist,
that he is with the Russians, and so therefore when the Ukrainian government asked for assistance, that's why he sent blankets instead of weapons, because he wants the Ukrainians to lose in a conflict with Russia because communism.
And also Band-Aids. And maybe
okay, but you're saying I got it right. I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying. You're saying I did understand what you were saying.
Right. When they asked for help, they wanted guns, ammunition, artilleries, and bombs or tanks or whatever.
You guys buy that one?
They just got blankets.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that's the case with something like Germany did something like that, but my understanding is that the United States sent like serious military gear, like rocket launchers or something that will take out tanks and things. So
yeah, the United States has been arming the Ukrainians for some time, from what I understand.
Yeah.
So I think you're completely wrong about that, Sarah. Although I don't disagree with you that Obama may be a communist. I mean, that may be the only part that's true in what you've said so far.
Well, so you should send me some money.
Wait.
Hold on, she didn't hear you. Sarah, nobody has some.
You should send me some money.
Well, you know what? You're a nobody. Why should a nobody get some money? Okay? So,
well, I don't feel like working, so I think you should support me.
Well, you have to convince the Social Security office. Can you convince them that you're ill in the head or body, that you can't work?
Ain't nothing wrong with me. I just don't feel like working.
Well, I mean, tell them that you're not going to get any money. You have to have doctor's records. But I just want to say, Obama was accused. He is a communist because he had signatures, signing sheets going into the Communist Party.
I believe you on that one. I just don't believe the rest of it.
You know something? I used to go to many of these communist
So just to
parties.
clarify, Sarah, I don't want you to just dodge what nobody is saying here. You don't want to help people. You don't want to actually send people who, want some help, some money, because you want the government to do everything, right? Like, you don't actually believe in communism.
Well, you know something? That you asked me why they take religious faith people now. Whatever the religious people believing in poor and starving and helping people is a communist value.
No.
No. Communists force people who help people out of charity, which is what most religions promote, do it voluntarily.
That's what sharing is.
What communists do is they force unwilling other people at gunpoint to give up what they've earned. So it's the opposite of Christianity. Jesus never said, jack your neighbor's stuff and give it to the poor.
Yeah. Well, they're taking from the crony capitalists, the extortionists.
No, they're taking from absolutely everyone.
It's the cronies that they don't take from.
Yeah.
They take from the people who earn it.
Thank you for the call tonight, Sarah. The number is 603-283-6160. David in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, responding to Chuckles the Clown in Washington. King David Chuckles, Olsenowski. Is that Jewish enough for you? And so let me thank you, Chuck. Let me take the opportunity and reply to you and do something that I've been meaning to do for a long time. My Olsen, O-L-S-O-N, my mother's maiden name, the Norwegian and non-Jewish German side of the family. And my father's name, Chuckles, is, and you can make fun of it. You can make fun of this too, Chuck. Fink, F-I-N-K, Fink. That's my father's name. And here's where I thank Chuck and the listeners, if they're interested, can help. Because when my mother and father split up when I was an infant, I never saw them again. So other than as an infant, I have never, ever met my father, Dieter Fink. So
there's more than we expected to know. Thank you for the call tonight, David. Appreciate it. The caller earlier did make it personal, and so he was responding to that. The number here is 603-283-6160. Now you know, 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. Take control of the airwaves coming up on Free Talk Live. Your thoughts are welcome.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies and organisations that the US has sanctioned this week, some critics had wondered why the United States had not taken the step of sanctioning the Russian leader himself. On Friday, the Biden administration changed that. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki making the announcement.
In alignment with the decision by our European allies, the United States will join them in sanctioning President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov and members of the Russian National Security Team.
US President Joe Biden had said for several weeks he was considering sanctions and asset freezes against Putin. But the Western countries have not imposed a travel ban on the Russian leader in order to allow him to travel to any potential talks and keep the door of diplomacy open.
In Kyiv,
Лідер фракції тут, голова Офісу президента тут.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky filmed himself outside the presidential compound tonight, assuring people he is still in the Ukrainian capital after Russia's propaganda organs falsely claimed that he'd fled. We're here. We are defending Ukraine, he said. In Moscow today,
Россия обеспечит демилитаризацию Украины.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov claiming the Kremlin would be open to talks with Ukrainian officials, but later President Putin himself dismissed the idea, urging members of the Ukrainian Defense Forces to turn against President Zelensky and his government. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg announced plans to fortify the alliance's defences along its eastern flank, and he offered this assessment of the military situation in Ukraine.
The Ukrainian forces are fighting bravely, but again, it is a very fluid and an evolving situation.
A statement by NATO heads of state and government called for an immediate halt to Russia's military assault and the withdrawal of Moscow's forces. Ollie Barrett with more from FSN's London bureau.
The characterization from Boris Johnson, he says it's a catastrophe engulfing the country. He says he told leaders, according to Downing Street, that President Putin's engaging in a revanchist mission to overturn the post-Cold War order. And we're told that Boris Johnson also warned fellow leaders that Vladimir Putin's ambitions might not stop there.
Russia will no longer host soccer's Champions League final, and Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. And one other headline, President Biden picked Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson as his nominee for the US Supreme Court. If confirmed by the Senate, she will become its first black woman justice. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones open here. You can join the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Ian, Nobody, and Chris in the studio tonight. And, of course, you can bring up whatever's on your mind. That's the thing we do here, open phones, every night of the week. We do the show 7 nights a week. If you want, you can join us online over on our social media site, social.freetalklive.com. That's social.freetalklive.com. We got a Mastodon-based social media site that we run. It's on our server. We get to decide how it works, and we've set the rules as pretty open. Like, you can post pretty much whatever you want there. Your opinions are welcome over at social.freetalklive.com. And we've got apps for all of the operating systems, unlike Trump's website, so-called Truth Social, that
had a pathetic launch earlier this week with only Apple, and even they're running Mastodon. They're running Mastodon. So like, why? Doesn't make any sense.
What?
It doesn't make any sense.
I gotta tell you, I hate Apple.
Yeah.
I mean, Apple has a minority share of the market. Why would you start with Apple?
Doesn't make sense. I don't know.
I guess Trump likes minorities more than everybody thought.
Apparently, I guess we're not giving enough credit for supporting minorities. That seems so contrary to Trump.
You hate Apple now more than ever, right? Nobody?
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you got a lot of.
I've had an Apple for a week. I can't use it because I can't get permission to install software.
And they ain't the government,
is it? A machine that belongs to me.
Yeah.
In theory, or belongs to the church, really. But
it's crazy.
Nonetheless, it's crazy. They've got everything so locked down that they have more control over your machine
than you do.
I'm afraid you might not be able to access it ever after you've said this on air with Apple.
Yeah, it's possible.
They might lock you out
They're
permanently.
all about the censorship.
We're going to talk a little bit more about tech coming up here with a major programmer in the programming world changing his mind about Bitcoin. But first, we're going to Richard in New Mexico. You're on Free Talk Live, Richard. Richard?
Yes. I was on a bus today, and people were talking about a possible nuclear war, and I made a comment to the guys on the bus that when I was 10 years old, which was 60 years ago, we had school drills where, in case of a missile attack from Russia way back 60 years ago, we would have a siren go off in our schoolroom, and we would all dive under our desk that was a wooden desk that was supposed to protect us if our school got hit.
No one believes that crap, right? Like, you guys didn't buy that back then, right?
You just get under the desk, you put your head between your legs, and you kiss your butt goodbye.
Yeah, pretty much. Nobody really understood back then, apparently, how redundant that was, because a bomb, when your school roof is collapsing on you, about a half-inch wooden desk isn't going to protect you a heck of a lot. Yeah. But on a lighter note, I would like to throw out how miserably our leaders in this country have failed us by not being more prepared against the Russian invasion. They should have had all kinds of weapons in Ukraine weeks ago, and just like Afghanistan, our president and all of his minions under him, in my opinion, have really failed again.
Well, I don't consider these people to be leaders. I consider them all to be criminals, all the Republicans and the Democrats. I don't look to them for leadership, and I never will. But thank you, Richard, for the call tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly be a wonderful charitable move to distribute rifles to all the needy people of the world. But I don't want the government doing it.
Yeah,
because they would just hand it out to the worst people they could find, people like them.
Yeah, if we're going to start handing out guns, let's hand them out to the people rather than like armies and governments.
Yeah, governments giving out weapons means missile systems to government people, and they'll just use it against their people if they want to.
Yep,
it's like foreign aid. Foreign aid is robbing poor people in rich countries to pay off rich people in poor countries.
Yep.
Let's change gears here a little bit. Chris, you had a story tonight. I had the same one. Yours from, I believe, Cointelegraph. I've got the one from news.bitcoin.com, and it's about Ruby on Rails' creator. Ruby on Rails is some sort of a programming language?
That's correct.
It's a Ruby
framework,
is the language. Ruby on Rails is a web programming environment.
So this guy, his name is David Hennemeyer Hansen,
And he has come out and made a major statement. And you want to share this story tonight, Chris? He's made a major statement when it comes to cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. He has changed his tune. He used to be very against Bitcoin, a vocal opponent of cryptocurrency, and now he's talking different.
Yeah, so I got the story from Cointelegraph here. Ruby on Rails creator backpedals about Bitcoin. Now he's saying we need we need crypto. So maybe not specifically
That's even
Bitcoin,
better.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
that is better because Bitcoin, it's the first and worst.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah, so he did a complete U-turn on Bitcoin due to Canada's financial crackdown on COVID-19 vaccine protesters. So Canada's move to freeze Bitcoin wallets and bank accounts related to the COVID-19 vaccine protests is driving cryptocurrency adoption, with some crypto naysayers reconsidering their stance on Bitcoin.
We should be re-clarify here. Canada cannot freeze self-custodied Bitcoin wallets where you have control of your keys. Canada can't do anything about that. They can pound their feet. They can, yell and scream, but they cannot force you to give up those keys.
Yeah, and this is interesting because people are actually closing down their bank accounts
in Canada,
but they're also doing it in the United States as well, especially at like TD Bank,
which is a Canadian bank.
Which is a Canadian bank, right? Exactly.
Well, it's a Canadian bank, and it's also it was an accessory to all the money that was stolen from the truckers.
Correct.
Right. So people are basically saying, "Hey, no more. I'm going to get out, and I'm going to get into crypto."
Right.
And so we've got a increasing number of people using it as a result. David Hennemir Hansen.
That's a lot of names.
It is. The Ruby on Rails web development framework creator took on Twitter on Monday to tell his followers that he was no longer a Bitcoin skeptic. I still can't believe that this is the protest that would prove every Bitcoin crank a prophet. So he comes out right there and actually says he was wrong, which is I gotta respect that. When you
to say you're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say
it
you're
happens.
wrong.
I used to be a socialist.
Yeah. Oh, especially when you've been so wrong for so long, right? Like Bitcoin's been around.
I mean, and usually people don't change their minds when they've been, dissing something for 10 years and I think he's been dissing it for 10 years or so.
Right.
So, and for me to have let me see here. And for me to have to slice a piece of humble pie and admit that I was wrong on crypto's fundamental necessity in Western democracies, Hansen wrote. So yeah, I mean, he's not, and the interesting thing is, he's not saying that all of his criticisms were wrong. They're valid. And the thing is, he's probably been right about some of his criticisms. Like, they're not invalid, they're criticisms, but this is the key. He's realized the need for cryptocurrencies, and all those criticisms, those things can be fixed. Those things are being fixed, and the problems, it's too important. Fundamentally, it's too important once you realize what governments can do. Not to even with all of those problems, it's still more important that we have crypto than not.
Yeah, he thought it was some sort of like crypto could only help people in developing nations. There's more comments. I guess he wrote a whole article about it. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I haven't read the whole article. I've read an article about his comments though.
Yeah, I haven't read the article. The news.bitcoin.com doesn't link to it, but they do a lot of excerpts from it here. So we'll see I'll check with you here in a moment, see if they match up to what you're looking at.
Sounds good.
Some of it's really interesting. We'll share a few more of his comments on the way here at 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live. You can weigh in as well. And the remaining moments coming up.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
This is Free Talk Live. You can join us here at 603-283-6160. You can bring up whatever's on your mind. Here in the studio tonight, you've got Ian,
and Chris.
Don't forget, Fork Fest is coming up in June and July. June 27th through July 3rd. You can join us for the 6th annual Fork Fest. It's happening in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire at Rogers Campground the week after the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is almost sold out. Fork Fest does not have tickets, however, so there is no sellout status unless we can fill the entire campground, which I don't think we're going to do because Fork Fest has tended to be smaller in population than the Porcupine Freedom Festival. But, you know, we'll see. You can go to Rogers.
Is Pork Fest going to fill the entire campground, do you think?
The entire campground has been sold out.
Yeah, I think it's already sold out.
For the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Yep. So you can still get a ticket to the Porcupine Freedom Festival. There's only maybe like 20% of the tickets left, and that was as of 2 weeks ago. So it might be like 10% left at this point.
I have heard, if you've got a ticket, come, because somebody's going to let you crash on their site, or half the time I just crash in my car.
I thought they weren't letting you into the campground unless you had a ticket to Pork Fest.
Correct. Yeah, you need to have a ticket.
So
to
you
get
can't just crash on somebody's campground.
Yeah, you can. You just have to find somebody who's willing to let you.
But they sold out of tickets. Correct?
No. You misunderstood. The campground is sold out.
Oh, but the tickets are not.
Tickets are available.
Okay.
They've only got like 10 or 15% or something like that left of the tickets to the event.
Fair enough.
But you got to figure out where you're going to sleep, and so that's what nobody's saying is talk to people when you get there and see what maybe somebody will let you probably pitch a tent on there.
You'll find a place to sleep if you make it to PorcFest.
I will say though that I'm hearing that there's people who are coming to PorcFest because PorcFest is sold out. So.
Yeah, well, the campground is sold out. Yep. So forkfest.party is where you can go to learn more about Forkfest. It's June 27th through July 3rd, and we will look forward to seeing you there. Free Talk Live will be broadcasting from both of those events. So I did pull up David Hennemeyer Hansen's blog post here on world.hey.com titled, "I Was Wrong, We Need Crypto." He says, to say I've been skeptical about Bitcoin and the rest of the crypto universe would be an understatement of epic proportions. He says there's just so much to oppose, and he goes through a few things like he's concerned about the energy consumption and the transaction fees and pump and dump schemes and so on. He criticizes Tether, which is a legitimate criticism.
Yeah.
But going on, he says, and he criticizes the lack of real decentralization in many of the current Web3 infrastructure and on and on and on. He says, beyond all these very real problems and challenges, my bigger beef was actually fueled by a lack of imagination. I could see the fundamental promise of a digital currency free of banks if you were living in a failing state like Venezuela or an overtly authoritarian one like China or Iran. But how is this relevant to the vast number of Bitcoin boosters living in stable Western democracies governed by the rule of law? Beyond the patina of philosophical respectability, it could apply to yet another get-rich-quick scheme. Now what's that saying again? Just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they aren't after you. It's starting to smell like that, he says. Just because Bitcoin's most virtuous argument was presented, if not bad faith, then fig leaf faith by get-rich-quick boosters, doesn't mean it isn't true. Enter the trucker protests in Canada. In just 3 weeks of honking, blocked streets and bridges, bouncy castles, and flag-waving, this peaceful protest movement managed to provoke the most shockingly authoritarian response from the Canadian government. First, the Ottawa Police Department got GoFundMe to confiscate donations with the intention of redirecting them to other causes. Then, after an outcry, they backed down to merely blocking the money for 7 to 10 days before refunding. That seemed like a draconian escalation, completely at odds with the tens of millions of dollars raised for social justice causes during the protest summer of 2020. But at the time, I thought it was something another fundraising platform, one less likely to collaborate with the Canadian authorities, could route around, and Give, Send, Go indeed started doing just that. Turns out the concern over the donations was quickly rendered insignificant, as just a few days later, the Canadian Prime Minister imposed martial law on the protesters. Through powers intended for catastrophic events, he took to freeze the bank accounts of both Canadian protesters and donors, to compulsorily demand that tow truck operators clear the streets, and forced insurance companies to drop policies for the protesters. We covered almost all of this here in depth on Free Talk Live over the last few weeks. He says that, quote-unquote, worked. Together with the police storming the protests with pepper spray and stun grenades, the area in front of Parliament was cleared, but even that wasn't enough. Even with the protests cleared out, the police vowed to press their new financial powers against anyone involved for months to come. So Canadians who donated to the truckers should now sleep with one eye open for the next several months, lest they have their bank accounts frozen and indictments filed on the basis of laws enacted to prevent financing of terrorism. Or maybe
get your money out of the bank and sleep like a baby.
It's time to start funding terrorism.
Or maybe their bank will simply preemptively cancel their accounts if they appeared on the hacked list of donators from Give, Send, Go. This is crazy, he says. Absolutely bonkers. Terrifying. I still can't believe that this is the protest that would prove every Bitcoin crank a prophet, and for me to have a slice a piece of humble pie and admit that I was wrong on crypto's fundamental necessity in Western democracies, and that it was the Canadians who brought this on. You might as well have told me that it was really the Care Bears who ran Abu Ghraib. Especially since I had some sympathy with fears projected by the U.S. progressive left, who spent 4 years fretting Trump might pull stunts like these. Then it turns out that the worries of an authoritarian overreach will be fulfilled by Trudeau to the north instead.
Meanwhile, plenty of American commentators are cheering this on. Those terrible, horrible, no good, very bad truckers got what they deserved. To protest for a repeal of pandemic restrictions so as to live the life they enjoyed in Denmark by a population less vaccinated by the Canadians, that's beyond the pale. But in a weird way, I'm glad we got this warning from Trudeau in Canada and not Trump in America. It would have been far too easy for Europeans in particular to dismiss authoritarian assertions of martial law from Trump as being irrelevant to the European experience, just like I had for so long deemed the practical desire of people in Venezuela or Iran or China for crypto irrelevant to the entire Western experience. Is France really that different from Canada, Austria, Denmark? This is a real wake-up call, he says. It reminds me of the Snowden revelations. Prior to him bringing proof, the idea that America was processing all the emails in the world, recording any phone call anywhere at will, and monitoring all internet traffic just seemed so hyperbolic. I remember discussing this with a friend in the 2000s when rumors of Echelon had gained some traction. It just didn't seem believable until it was undeniable. I'm sitting here with that same feeling. Even just a few months ago, I would not have found it credible if you said a 3-week peaceful protest in Canada could have led to martial law, frozen bank accounts, and terrorist financing laws being used to hunt protest donors. Unbelievable then, undeniable now. I don't think we have any kind of idea what kind of radicalizing seeds have been planted by Trudeau with these actions. This is one of those world events you can imagine a documentary in the future opening with, "It all started when." But wherever this leads us next, it's clear to me now that I was too hasty to completely dismiss crypto on the basis of all the things wrong with it at the moment, instead of appreciating the fundamental freedom to transact that it's currently our best shot at protecting.
We're all living in a bubble.
What do you mean by that?
A self-imposed bubble, probably to a great degree. Do you talk to the people on the left? Do you talk to the people on the right?
Well, we do here on the
show. We do. Okay, this is a bad example of this show, but most people don't.
Mm-hmm. You're saying they're living in a bubble where they only hear the same things.
Right, they only hear what they want to hear, and that's how you end up in the situation where you...
Well, he heard it, but he just denied it. He heard that crypto could help with transaction safety and
but
not
heard
being
it only from other people of like mind, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And so it reinforces this. Well, that's impossible.
He just didn't believe it could happen here, is what he's saying. He didn't think in Western democracies, quote unquote, tyranny could happen and that crypto could help us.
He'd bought into the government propaganda.
Yeah.
So it's quite understandable. I don't think it was a lack of knowledge about Bitcoin. It was just, hey, we've got a perfectly good, safe financial system here, and it turns out we don't have.
But if he had really been
safe financial system here,
I don't know. I feel like if he had really been listening to people opposing opinion, he would have heard the counter arguments.
He heard the arguments. He just didn't believe they applied.
Yeah, all right.
He didn't think it could. He didn't think it could happen here, and this is what clicked it for him.
That was actually a book.
That it can't happen
fascism
here?
coming to America. It was called "It Can't Happen Here."
Oh yeah,
yeah. It was a good book. It was Sinclair Lewis, maybe.
That sounds right. Yeah, it would come waving a flag, I think was what he.
Yeah,
he wrote.
when fascism comes to America, it will be wrapped in a flag and holding a Bible.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I'm glad it worked for him, right? Like he had all the information to where once he saw what was really happening, he said, "Oh crap, I was wrong." And he came right out and he admitted that. So really, kudos to this guy.
Yeah, definitely have to pat him on the back.
I respect it.
I
hope he'll take Ruby on Rails and write the next great distributed web platform for crypto on it or something.
David Hennemeyer Hansen is his name. I'll take the URL from this. I'll share it on our social media platform, which is over at social.freetalklive.com. If you're not on there, then you're at the mercy of Twitter and Facebook, and that mercy may not last for people with our opinions. Social.freetalklive.com. Check that out over there. We'll see you tomorrow night online. In the meantime, you can join us at freetalklive.com. See you tomorrow. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
This is the Liberty Radio Network, broadcasting the latest liberty-oriented audio content 24 hours a day at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The Biden administration has announced it is sanctioning Russian President Vladimir Putin personally over his invasion of Ukraine. It follows a similar move by the European Union and the United Kingdom. From FSN's Washington bureau, Nick Harper reports.
Watching the growing list of people, companies